Chloe, it is absolutely an honor to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. And I'm so glad to be here today on your podcast, Victoria.
Yes. So before we get into the juicy, deep questions, I have 10 quick fire questions for you.
Okay.
So number one, describe humanity in 3 words.
Wow. Healing, oneness, and expansive.
Do you have a spirit animal?
Yes, I do. It's the owl.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
If you were homeless and you had a sign in front of you, what would you write on your sign?
Well, I would write, that's a very good question. Yeah, pray for me.
What is love?
It's energy.
When I know, so finish this sentence. When I notice I'm experiencing a body image trigger, I
tune within myself.
Within. Do you have a quote or a mantra that you like to live by or that's dear to you?
Yes, I do. Well, one of the main things would be let love guide you, not fear.
Oh my God, there's so much wisdom just in these quick questions. Number 7, what book do you recommend everyone in the world to read?
The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
The first spiritual book I ever read, that was. So good. Dogs or cats?
Cats.
What's your favorite food?
Well, that's a good question. Honestly, water and lemon.
Fresh.
So lemon. Yeah.
Lemon. And last question, Chloe, why? I'm so grateful that you said yes, but why did you say yes to coming and sharing your message today?
Well, honestly, I said yes to having like a conversation with you and just being in your presence.
Thank you. It's beautiful. I received that, although a little bit awkwardly, I still receive it. Thank you, sister. All right. Thank you for that, Chloe. And can you just share to the listeners a little bit about your story and how you ended up doing what you do today?
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. So my story was really rooted in, so I experienced when I was a child a lot of, childhood abuse and trauma. So what it really led me to live a life where I was obviously coping, and honestly, many of us cope differently with different types of trauma. But on my side, I experienced a lot of childhood abuse, feeling unheard, feeling bullied, feeling mocked, and feeling constantly, out of place, out of love. So I led a life where I was coping a lot and created a lot of situation that where I suffered, and I'm sure many will relate to that, attracting abusive relationships and experiencing abusive relationships. And so I was very much unhappy in my life, and at one point had to hit bottom, had to hit bottom ground and really realize that I had to change. Something needed to change because I was really unhappy in an abusive relationship where I was at a point where I was starting to get scared if I was, gonna being hit by my partner. And so where I really didn't have any self-respect, self-love anymore in myself. So that really that was a turning point for me to really realize I had to change something and things needed to change. So this led me, obviously, like many of us, to study self-development and kind of rebuild myself, leaving that relationship and rebuild myself to create more confidence inside of myself, and just really desiring something different and a different experience, basically. And so I took that road of very masculine energy, very assertive energy, and I was very much in that, very confident. I mean, on the outside, it looked like I was very confident. And I realized on that journey at one point that actually I still had like issues, like mental health issues, coping mechanisms. And slowly I started realizing like, oh my God, I'm binge eating a lot, like I'm still starving myself. And I started becoming aware of all those things that started to be an issue for me to move forward. So at first, self-development really helped me to move forward in my life. And at one point I started feeling stuck because I had all those mental health issues, all those coping mechanisms, all those addictions that I was suffering, that was really creating a lot of blocks for me to move forward. And so I kind of at one point felt trapped because all of that was really my life was evolving basically around my coping mechanisms and my need to feel safe and my traumas and stuff. So thankfully, that's where the divine plan started to, kick off in a way. And I was searching for some answers on my side. So I discovered, meditation as well. And meditation, I had discovered meditation from a previous trip and travel in the United States. So I had volunteered in a Buddhist center where they taught me how to, showed me how to meditate. So it stayed a little with me, but at that time, it got really like that memory got triggered. I thought, okay, I need to find some answers in that direction. And I remembered like, okay, meditation is all about this and that. So I started to read books. Eckhart Tolle also came on that journey as well. And so I kind of became very, of course, interested in another way of living. Still, I was still stuck. So I was, accumulating knowledge, but it's still like nothing was really shifting within myself. So when the turning point for me was when I met a shaman, and she gave me an energy healing session. And so that triggered in me an experience I didn't know, like an experience of releasing emotions. And it was really like very powerful. So I was, very, very shocked by the experience. I was just like, okay, there's something very powerful in feeling those emotions. And so that's how I started, to really go into like a very deep meditation practice. And that healing session really triggered like a huge spiritual awakening for me. So my chakras opened. I had a Kundalini awakening. So like the life force energy awakening in your body. So I went through like a deep 6 months of like huge physical, on a cellular levels, physical change. Like it was really beyond me. I was a little scared at times, I didn't know what was happening to me. I had a huge epiphany. I had my crown chakra opening, like the experience of God, the experience of oneness, feeling at one with everything, where I would remember walking in a train station and just feeling at one with the child, with the table, with the people there. Like it was such a weird experiences happening. And so a huge spiritual awakening. And that really led me to intuitively, connect with energy healing. So I started doing, healings intuitively. I really didn't know really what I was doing. So I tried to research things and stuff, but I had no idea what Reiki was, what energy healing was, what all of the spiritual modalities of healing were. And so I really started to do everything intuitively. I started reading cards and connecting with my intuition. So this really brought me into a place where I started shifting into this new earth and this new way of living. And then I went after that. So although it looked, it felt like, okay, I'm at the end of the journey. I got everything. I understood everything. Well, I still had, things to heal. And the thing that I was finding very difficult was to connect with my emotions and actually really, embody my emotions and heal. I was still sometimes, feeling like I was avoidant of myself, still going sometimes into my coping mechanisms or giving into fear. So that's when I experienced dark magic from a former ex who wanted to go out with me and put a spell on me. And that was actually, divinely planned for me. And that was like a huge blessing in disguise, because to get out of that situation, and I will now go into details about dark magic, but to get out of that situation, I really had to find a way out. And there was no way out except from facing like as much wounding as I could, so that the spell would leave my body and the dark magic will reduce, and so that I could free myself from that energy. And so this experience in particular opened the door for me on deep energy, like deep healing, emotional healing, and trauma healing. And putting that with, so getting out of that situation, and also all the things that I was studied, combining everything allowed me to create, a modality and mixing many things to make sure, people can heal trauma and really move through the emotional stuff they carry, so that they can actually experience a real shift inside and outside. For me, like healing myself through that relationship and healing myself through that, experience with dark magic allowed me to as well, not just heal myself, but manifest my husband, manifest a loving relationship, and starting to in myself, shift and change. Like my energy started to change as well, and just my, healing my coping mechanisms, my addictions left, and all the mental health issues and the coping mechanisms I had put in place.
Wow. That is such a beautiful story, and I love it. I've heard it a few times in different ways, but there's always something I get from listening. So thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.
And I have a few questions. So if we go back to when you said you attracted situations and relationships that manifested in trauma for you, what does that mean? So those that don't understand, like, how the hell can we decide like we want to attract pain? How does that work?
Yeah, that's such a powerful question. And honestly, in the past, I used to hear like you manifest, what you are, you manifest things. And for a long time also, I got trapped into thinking, okay, like it's my fault that I manifested abuse, and like kind of feeling like I kind of deserved it in a way, So it's important to not stay in that mindset. And so really what I understood and what I mean by, manifesting things is that we manifest unconsciously. So the thing we really manifest the most is actually everything that is unconscious. So depending on your upbringing, on your past lives and everything you're carrying, you're gonna manifest those traumas and patterns unconsciously, of course, because it's something that you're used to. And so this is why, like, you might choose also a partner, you might be attracted to certain people, like certain abuse. I used to be very attractive to abusive people. They had something, like it was even like it felt like they had some form of magnetism to me. When they didn't have that to anyone else, but for me, they were the most attractive people in the world, because that was really my love blueprint. My dad was abusive, my mother was abusive as well. So for me, that felt attractive. That was how I created my attachment style and the way I perceive love. So the way I perceive manifesting, what things in your life and maybe a negative experience or traumatic experience, and you're just recreating that trauma, has to do with how your brain has been brought when you were a child, usually, and so this is also why we tend to attract also like maybe abusive partners, but also when you attract abusive partner, there's also the other side where you choose them as well. So there's two part going on. the first part is you attract, certain types of people. And then you have also like the part where if you're aware of it or not, you might choose that person. But if you're aware that you might, you're attracting, for instance, narcissistic people, you might be aware and just, know exactly what type of people they are and just push them away. But something I really realized on my journey was I had built my mind. So I had made sure to build my mind to resist, those people I was attracted to. Still, I was still attracted to them though. And so that was an issue. And that issue brought me this person who put dark magic on me, because this person didn't, respect boundaries. If all narcissists knew what dark magic was, I mean, that will that will be an issue. But this person, although I was resisting this person because I had built my mind to resist abusive partners, but this person still had that tool, and so decided, okay, I'm gonna put a spell on her to get her to be my girlfriend. And so in a way, I manifested, quote unquote, manifested that situation. And it, because I was still like attracted and still needed healing, right? I attracted then my husband because I healed that wounding.
That is so key. And this leads me into the mindset and the energy work, because when I came to you, because I've already said in the intro to this, like, Chloe is my coach, therapist, like all the things, sister. I've learned so much from you, Chloe, in terms of healing and going deeper, because as you know, my mind is very strong. I can masculine my way through everything, like all the body image stuff. I choose the tools, and I'm so much further on than I ever have been before. But there was still some triggers like that I couldn't work past. And it was because I was so much in my masculine energy and in my head and in my mindset, I kind of forgot the embodiment. Well, I didn't understand or know the embodiment and the energy. And then working with you, Chloe, have shifted so much. So can you share, like, because mindset is a big deal and I think it's important. And then what's the difference between mindset and then energy work and embody? And then I have so many more questions around trauma as well, but I'll keep it there for starters.
I love it. I love this question. Actually, we need balance of both. You can be very much, embodying like your divine feminine, like you might be very embodied, very healed, for instance. But if you don't have healed your masculine side or a strong masculine mindset, you might, I don't know, might not be able to be a leader, might not be able to put your message out there, right? So you need a strong masculine energy and build your masculine energy. The difference with masculine energy is that it takes as much work. Honestly, I think masculine and feminine is two different ways of working. And I'm sure like to build your mind, on my side, to build the masculine energy, I had to really, I would listen to seminars, 2-hour seminars of, Jim Rohn, Les Brown, and just so that I could integrate their words and just know it by heart. And I would just listen to that, for days and for weeks until I knew it by heart. So both of them are essential to each other.
Yeah. And I went through the track of overachieving at personal development. So every single time I was walking or had a free time, I would be listening to a podcast or listening to an audiobook or doing something, because I was like, I need to learn, which is great. But then knowledge isn't everything. Knowledge isn't power. Knowledge plus embodiment and action is power, like personal power.
Yeah, and plus we have access to knowledge by healing. Like we have inner knowledge already. So you can really, for instance, energy healing for me was an inner knowledge. I wasn't taught how to heal with my hands or with energy, but I just intuitively tapped into that because I had that within myself. And we all have deep knowledge, deep divine knowledge within ourselves. And by focusing also on the feminine energy, on the healing, on the emotional, we can tap into that. And so both combined, it's just a perfect harmony for a human being, to be a balanced human being, so that you're not too you're not coping, you're not dealing with trauma, and because oftentimes, our masculine energy as well, is serving our feminine energy. So if you're wounded on the feminine side, you might have certain behaviors, impulsive behaviors that you have a hard time to control. That's what coping mechanisms are. So also your feminine energy is very much, the root sometimes of your behavior, of the way your masculine energy acts towards others or in your life.
Wow. So say if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, I don't love certain aspects of my life. I'm not consciously choosing this, therefore unconsciously I must be attracting it to me and then choosing it that way. Mm-hmm. How do you then bring this to the surface and heal without always running to coping mechanisms, which is obviously what humans do, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But in order to heal and to move forward, we need to really look at what's going on.
Exactly. So if you're attracting situations that you don't like, first of all, the important thing is to understand what type of situation you're attracting. So let's say you're attracting friendships where you're feeling powerless, for instance, or toxic friendships or toxic relationships. What is the feeling like? How are you feeling in those relationships? What the experience make you feel? Are you powerless? Are you just infantilized or like a child? Or what feelings are you feeling when you're in those relationships? So what trauma is brought up? So when you can understand, what they're bringing up in you and how you're feeling in those types of relationship, that's where you can dig deeper into, okay, so there's this feeling might be something I felt when I was a child. That might be the reflection also of my relationship with my father and with my mother. And obviously it's all about digging deeper into presence with your body as well. So there's a part where you can understand, it's all about becoming conscious about what you're attracting. I think when you put awareness on something, you shed light, it starts the healing process, So once you can understand it, become conscious of what you're attracting, conscious about your coping mechanisms, just very honest with yourself, like, okay, that's what I'm attracting consciously, what I'm doing consciously. And then you can start, understanding, what are the feelings that those are triggering in me? And so it's all about really accessing those emotions. So that's why I always encourage anyone who knows me knows that I just talk so much about meditation and how the importance of meditation and learning to connect with the body. Because the more you practice that, the more you practice meditation, the more you can be able to be in presence with yourself and connect with those emotions as well. So
yeah, that's beautiful, because I thought before I came to you that, and I had progressed so much in terms of feeling my feelings, acknowledging my feelings, and I got to the stage where I was like, okay, I feel this way, I named the feeling, and then that was it, I moved on. But actually there's layers to feeling. So say if we feel anger, yes, you're feeling anger, that's valid and that's your experience, but actually what's underneath the anger, because that's a cover up for another emotion. So how can we actually feel? Because I remember when I heard you say, like, just feel your emotions, and I was kind of like, what does that actually mean though? Because we are so disconnected and we're not taught this in schools, obviously. How can someone notice, okay, this relationship is making me feel unheard? And then what? Then what would you do to embody that and to heal that?
That's a very good question. So obviously, if we were programmed in a different way, we would be able to release emotions easily, release trauma easily. But we have so much sometimes resistance towards, emotions that it might take some time. So adding up to the trauma you might have, the internalized emotions you might have, you might also have a lot of judgments around feeling emotions, especially, for instance, on my side, being in an abusive household just made me feel so ashamed of my emotions. So feeling my emotions in front of someone or just being vulnerable was just the scariest thing on earth. So the thing to understand with your body and the way to heal is that your subconscious mind, aka your body, so your body is really gives you access to your subconscious mind. So it's the physical manifestation of your subconscious mind. And your body is like an inner child. It's like a child. And so when you have a child that's traumatized, it's been traumatized, that's what really our bodies are experiencing. You know, it's like a child being who had trauma and experienced trauma. So to open up a child, and many parents might relate to that, to make your child, you know, cooperate and speak or express herself or himself, you need a lot sometimes of patience and create like a space where that child feels safe enough to express itself or herself. So I always, you know, if you're feeling in your, for instance, your relationship, you're feeling unheard and you're feeling those emotions, you know, these emotions that are coming up, that's when you can just, you know, take some time alone and really creating a space for yourself. So if that means, you know, if with your partner you don't feel safe enough, you know, to express your emotions and you don't feel like it's a safe space for you, it's fine, you know. Doesn't mean your partner is a bad person. It's just like they're not there for that. So I would advise, you know, go first of all, be in a space where you feel safe, alone, where you feel maybe that partner might not be hearing if you feel very, you know, stressed out about feeling emotions, but create really that safe space. And then start talking with your body. So feeling your emotions is all a process. It's not going to be a one-time release. So if you have trauma right now, you know, something is getting triggered, it might not be released in 1 second, 5 minutes. It might take a week. It might be a process of releasing more and more. So it's all about opening the door to the emotion. That's really the key of feeling your emotions, is opening the door to the emotions that it starts coming out. So the key to open the door to your emotion is all about sitting with yourself, having a space where you can really be with yourself and dive into yourself, safe enough to do that without any blocks. And then what I like to do and always advise is to talk out loud. Using your voice is very powerful, and I'm sure, you know, Victoria, will agree with that, and many coaches, many people will agree with that. When you use your voice is very powerful. So using your voice is very powerful, and just sitting with your body and connecting with the emotion you're feeling. So not resisting is fine. Like if you're feeling sadness, or if you're feeling like you want you want to crawl into your shell, just really go into that emotion. There's nothing to be scared about. It's just an emotion. So go into that emotion and then start talking with your body. Go from being your higher self, the wise adult. So when you're, you know, when you're connected with source, you're in your higher self energy, and talk to your body, and talk to your body as if you're talking to a child, and ask her, okay, how are you, honey? What is going on? Just tell me what, you know, what are you feeling? And just really letting your body speak through you and start expressing herself. The more we go into that, the more you'll see that your body will start really releasing, or just feeling, you know, not necessarily speaking, but feeling.
I did that, like, well, this is going to be coming out in a few weeks, and as we're recording this, my Instagram's recently been hacked, as you know. And that brought up a lot of triggers for me, emotions for me to able to heal that. And I literally sat in front of the mirror naked, just by myself, crying, and I just looked at myself and I was like, it's okay, sweetheart, what's going on? Let's just figure this out together. And it was such a beautiful healing process. And after that, I mean, it wasn't about the time, it probably took 10 minutes. And then I said thank you to myself, thank you to my higher self, like, I love you. And then I got on with like my shower and my day, and I felt physically lighter. I felt more like, I felt like not that it looks really matter, but I looked at myself in the mirror and was deeply accepting and loving. It's so powerful. I know it can sound a bit strange to those that haven't done this before, because I remember my first ever coach told me to tell myself every day in the mirror that I love you. And I found it, I was angry. I found it stupid. I thought, what's the point? And that was all the resistance coming up. And I did that, and I cried and cried for weeks and weeks, and it just got easier and easier. And now I do that every morning. It's just a habit. I was like, good morning, beautiful, I love you, which sounds weird, but your body is always listening. And I love the fact that you said, that our unconscious minds are our bodies and trauma is stored there. And if we just hold that safe space and just acknowledge and then ask questions and just be there and feel it, things can get healed that way.
Exactly. It's all about, as you just said, like acceptance and holding space basically for your emotions, and letting your body know that it's okay. You're feeling triggered, sad, you want to cry, just cry. You're allowed to cry. You're human. It's okay.
What is trauma? Exactly, because I believe that trauma is stored in the body, and I know you do too, but how is trauma created?
Mm-hmm.
What happens, like, as if we were a child and we experience trauma, like what happens to our central nervous system, then why do we then carry that forth, and it's unhealed within us? What happens there?
Well, trauma is when we have a very scary and emotional experience, where there was no resolution. So for instance, your caregiver is just yells at you, and you're just having all this anger coming towards you, and you're just feeling all those emotions. And it can happen. Any parent can end up yelling at their kids, but so the child feels all those emotions. And if there's no you know hugging resolution from the caregiver coming towards the child and just holding the child, right? Like when we're feeling scared, when we're children, we want our mother or father to be like, okay, oh, it's all okay, and holding us. When there's no resolution and the child is just left with all those emotions and all this confusion, and without any space, loving space to hold them and let it out, then it becomes internalized. And trauma is really just internalized emotions. So it can be very heavy, it could be very traumatic experiences, or like very deep stressful experiences. But it's really when your nervous system requires, and there's like danger, and it's a scary situation, and there's no resolution, that becomes stored in your body, and it becomes trauma.
Wow. And then the triggers that we experience as adults and throughout our life, do you see them as an opportunity to then heal what is kind of stored and stuck?
Exactly, yeah. And usually you'll see when you get triggered, it's like you're going back into a shell, maybe of a 5 years old or 8 years old. You're feeling like you're that child again, which is absolutely fine. And actually, when you get triggered, it's the opportunity. Go in that, become that child. It's fine. Become that child. Allow yourself to feel that vulnerability. I'm thinking of, even when in terms of sexual abuse, sometimes you can go back into that feeling of very vulnerable place when you're healing sexual abuse, which is fine. And sometimes it takes weeks. You need to soothe yourself. You need to really hold yourself and let those emotions go through your body. But yeah, just it's all about embodying those emotions and allowing yourself to go into that little girl or that person you were before.
Yeah,
And
and we don't
experience
want to
that.
do that, do we? Because it's too painful. We think it is, but
It,
actually, it's not.
yeah, yeah, it's painful and it's scary. It's human to be scared of pain, and of course, yeah, it feels painful. But as you just introduced it, like it depends on how you perceive that pain. I would like to use discomfort more than pain, because pain goes with suffering. That's when there's suffering. But when we're healing, it's more of just the uncomfortableness of going back into that place and just feeling those emotions we felt, and we were not able to externalize. That's what basically we do. We go back into that place and we externalize those emotions where that we couldn't at that moment, because maybe we were in a safe space. Especially for children who've been abused or experienced childhood abuse, like there's no safe space to externalize your emotions. So it's like you're taking abuse, but there's no way you can externalize those emotions that you're feeling.
Yeah. And in terms of like being scared of emotions, I've noticed like recently, and I was running the other day and I was thinking this through in my mind, and I was like, actually, if you think about it, being scared of something let's say an emotion, let's say you've been abused, or even let's move on to body image, because of course that's what I'm all about. Like, say if you're feeling such deep shame around your body and you're fearful of looking in the mirror or whatever it may be, if you're thinking of the situation or the experience that's going to cause that I was going to say pain, I'm going to reframe, the difficult emotions, the fear of thinking about that is worse than just feeling the shame that you feel when you look in the mirror, because then it starts to soften. It might not disappear, as you said. It's not like, okay, I'm going to feel my shame and then I'm done. No. Unfortunately not. But resisting it and having it on your mind and being like, I'm just not going there, I feel that creates more suffering.
That's so true. And you're right. Because you still, it's like when you're just taking off the band-aid very harshly. And if you take it slowly, or if you resist, let's say you let the band-aids, I was gonna say, like, you're gonna still suffer constantly and know that the band-aid is there, but you need to take it off at one point. And then everything becomes, there's no band-aid afterwards, after layers of, it softened more and more.
Yeah. And there's layers. I keep wanting to say the word layers. Like, for me, anger is a layer. Like, underneath the anger and all of that, it's like a deep shame feeling. And because I used to be so much in my masculine, the anger was the best way for me to express shame, because I was like protecting myself in a way from feeling the shame. So it's actually, I was loving towards myself, but it wasn't in a helpful way. So it wasn't until I got really, with your help, like, okay, what's underneath all this anger? Because I don't resonate with anger, but it's there. And then at the root of it, it's just shame and like not feeling enough. And when you go to that, and I feel emotional now, but from like just a loving place of like what I used to do to try and protect me, but I was actually just suffering longer. To just be invited to really get to know yourself and like what's underneath it all, and just sit with it and just love yourself through it. And it sounds quite simple, but honestly, it's so incredibly healing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's work as well, but it's healing and it's worth it. And as you just said, like, every time you just even access a little bit of those emotions, okay, you don't need to go dive straight into the shame, because it feels very too much uncomfortable. It doesn't need to be traumatic, but just diving a little bit, or acknowledging, oh, I'm feeling shame. That's what it's really about. It's about just acknowledging the shame. It's like acknowledging that child that's feeling shameful. It's like, oh, I see you. I'm not judging you. And I'm holding space for the way you're feeling. Just even that is going to soften you. It's going to make you feel a little better, a little lighter.
Yeah, instead of being mean to ourselves in our heads, because so many people, I've just spent a weekend with 22 other women at a bachelorette party, which was wonderful, but also it was like a big mirror from the person who I used to be in terms of like how they are. And this is no judgment here, but so many of them, like from having some personal conversations over the weekend, they're so mean to themselves, and nothing's ever good enough, and they're not good enough compared to this person, and like all these things. And my heart seriously goes out to them, because I understand how that feels. But if we can just speak kinder to ourselves without changing anything, without trying to change our whole lives, without trying to change our whole external situation, because as within, so without. So if we just generally speak kinder, things will start to shift.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can relate as well to that, for being such a perfectionist with myself, to have struggled massively with self-esteem and confidence and just assertiveness. I mean, I always view it as we all have different upbringing, and when we're not really kind to ourselves, or we're feeling, even that shame, or we're expressing ourselves and we're feeling ashamed, or we're not good enough, in everything we do on a daily basis, or what we achieved is not enough. It always comes back down to, okay, that little child, how your parents behaved towards you. Did you feel good enough? Did they make you feel good enough? Because in a way, we're, as a species, as humanity, we're healing, and we've been passing from generation to generation trauma in that way, not enoughness, feeling not enough, and just having our parents struggling with self-esteem, just perpetuating those same behaviors towards us and just doing that from one generation to another. So it makes sense that today we're all struggling to have a healthy, sense of self and just feeling good about ourselves. And that's why healing is essential, so that we can really be rooted in ourselves and feeling deeply healthy. I want to still, say that, of course, like a healing journey and expansion, and as a humanity, like we're going to do that all our lives. So like the bad news with healing is that it's something that you're going to do all your life. There's always going to be a new layer.
Oh
but
yeah.
but the essential to understand is that what we're doing here is you can get, first of all, you can get into a place where you're relatively stable. Let's say stable, you've healed a lot of your trauma, but we're still understanding love. Our entire life journey is about, and throughout our lifetimes is about understanding what God is, what unconditional love is. By understanding what unconditional love is for ourselves. And so unconditional love is so limitless that we can understand it so much more, and more layers of it. So understanding more layers of love, of what unconditional love is about dismantling the layers within us that make us confused about that new layer of love. So the more we shut off within ourselves, the more we understand what unconditional love is. And the more we grow that understanding, which it doesn't have any limit, honestly. So
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So much yes to this. And you kind of answered one of my questions, which was, do we ever fully heal? And no, there's always layers, but as we heal those layers, we become more in alignment with God and Goddess. We become more in alignment each time.
yeah. And I mean, I used to struggle with perfectionism, or like deep perfectionism. Okay, I need to get to a place where I'm like fully healed, or everything I
Yeah.
did and needed to be perfect. But if you could be not fully healed, but you could be very healed, and that's
Mm.
enough.
Mm.
Even if you're just very healed, there's maybe new layers coming up, and that's fine as well. That's perfect. That's enough.
Yeah, I would say that's where I am now, because I was similar to you. I need to nail this healing journey, and then I can help others and live happily ever after. And the funny thing is, I'm so happy and full of joy and love. And of course, I have emotions that are difficult because I'm human and there's more to be healed. But all of that is perfect and imperfect and messy and magnificent and all meant to be. And when you're just in that, I just see it as, like, I explained this to my mum yesterday. We was on a walk and we was near the water, and there was like reeds by the water, and it was a little bit windy. And I said, just stop for a minute, just look at those reeds. And they were just being, and they were the wind was swaying them one way and then the next way, and they were just there, and they were just being moved around, but just lovingly just being there. I don't know if this makes any sense, but
Mhm.
I learned a lot from the reads. Just life is going to move you from different places, and that's okay. And that's just be with that, and just don't abandon yourself whilst you're being moved from
Yeah.
different places. And when you don't know how to be, just be with yourself, and then that's all you need to do.
Yeah, stay rooted like the tree.
Mm.
And yeah, absolutely. And nature just teaches us that so well. Because there's we don't need to put any meaning to, really. It's like you're feeling an emotion, just feel your emotion and then continue to move in your life, and just let those emotions come up without really, you don't even need to put a meaning like, oh, I'm incomplete. Sometimes we tend to like, okay, I'm feeling those emotions. It means like I'm broken, I'm incomplete, I'm not perfect, I'm not healed. Doesn't necessarily mean that. It's just energy coming through you.
Mm.
And we're emotional beings, so we're meant to feel different ranges of emotions. In terms of trauma, of course, like you can get like, the more you go on your healing journey, of course, the more you open the door of feeling your emotions, the easier it gets, honestly.
Yeah.
And once you've accessed the most difficult emotions you had to access, the really deep trauma you have, then you might have new layers that come up, but it's going to be way easier. It gets just easier. And then we can just get to a place where we're just feeling emotions that pass through us. We don't need to put any meaning. It's just, okay, this emotion needs to come out. It was internalized maybe at that moment. I don't really care when it was, but it's just coming out, and that's fine.
Yes, yes, yes. And it does get easier. It really does. And going back to the bachelorette weekend I've just had, like I was speaking to a lady and she's so sweet and she wanted to cry. And then she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, honestly, please cry, because that is so healing and it's actually releasing. If you're stopping yourself from crying because apparently you need to apologize for it, which is obviously her perception of crying, it's a weakness, you're just keeping that stored within you, and then you're suffering even more. So she had a good cry, and I love to cry. It's very healing.
Oh, I love to cry as well. Like, I love to cry. I
Yeah.
cry. I mean, at least yeah, one time a day I cry.
Yeah.
It's just very, very healing.
Yeah.
And it's as you said, it's so painful to keep those emotions inside. Internalizing, if you're in the mindset of loving yourself and you want to love yourself, the best thing to love yourself is to let your emotions out, to not hurt your body if you don't want to hurt yourself. That's like the most self-loving act you can have towards yourself.
Chloe, it's literally like you can read my questions almost. Like the next, of course, we're so intuitively connected. I was going to ask you, like, you have struggled with body image, not now, but throughout your life, and eating disorders and things like that. What what has helped you the most? I know obviously there's so many layers to all of this, but someone who's listening, because my listeners tend to have disordered eating, body image struggles, what would you recommend they do in terms of embodiment or mindset or actions to help them start to the healing process?
Well, first of all, don't judge yourself and love your coping mechanisms, love your addictions, love them, because it's just like your inner child and your body wanting you to not suffer. So if you're binge eating, your body doesn't want you to suffer, so it makes you binge eat. So just love those. Thank your body for doing that, for wanting the best for you, even if it's not like the right way. I suffered from sex addiction, the most, like, in society, the most shameful thing we can have type of addiction, right?
Especially as a
It's
woman.
very taboo. Yeah, especially for a woman, like being promiscuous and just wanting to have sex all the time, like that's just like the worst thing. But something that really helped me to deal with that addiction was actually not judging myself and just finding, in the process of healing, you find ways to manage it, lovingly. Okay. So I would talk to my inner child, I would tell her, okay, there's no shame. It's fine if you want to have sex. And if you want, like, if you want us to have sex and deal with that trauma in this way. And I'm not judging you for that at all. But maybe we can do it this way, or maybe we can try to, keep our dignity as much as we can in those moments. But just not judging yourself is just, I mean, for me, it was just so helpful, because you're already like suffering. And if you just put a layer of, oh, you binge eat again, I hate you, and just adding more anger, that's just the most awful thing we can do. It's not helpful.
Yeah, it's so interesting you said that, because as I shared, my first ever coach, when I started my healing journey, she said to me, love yourself through the binges. And I was so angry at that, because I was like, how the hell am I supposed to love myself through eating shitloads of food and feeling awful about it? And I couldn't connect that frequency because I didn't understand it. But I'd paid a lot of money. I trusted her, which is why I was led to her. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to try my hardest to love myself through all the things that I've been judging myself for however many years. And it was so interesting. The more I kept trying, doing the mirror work, I love you, Victoria, feeling stupid, but then day by day, it felt more real. The binging, and there's lots of other things I teach as well, obviously, but the binging softened. And then I would still do the behavior, but it stopped. I didn't feel guilty for it. And then because I didn't have that, it didn't give me anything anymore, because obviously unconsciously I wanted to feel guilty and shit about myself. Therefore, that's why I kept doing it. it just leveled out and then just like evaporated. And that was because I loved it, which doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, but just like being not judgmental and just having just love, non-judge, love is the absence of judgment. So it's just like holding space and just being like, okay, accepting, loving. And exactly, it can already shift a little bit. And for me as well, it felt the same way. Once I was not feeling ashamed of anything and just embracing everything of where I was, it actually softened me more, and I would maybe do it less and binge eat less, or
It's amazing. And just for the last couple of moments, in terms of body image specifically, so if women are so ashamed of their bodies and they can't look in the mirror and they're just in a really bad place in terms of how they feel towards their physical body, what has helped you work through all of that? Because I think that's at the root of most of the eating problems as well. It's the body.
Well, understanding that in front of me, like that in that mirror was a child that was suffering so greatly. I was in pain. And so the fact that I had a hard time looking at myself in the mirror was just, I had a hard time to look at what happened, look at my past, and look at the pain. So it's okay if you're not able to look at yourself in the mirror some days and that is too triggering. It's fine. Honestly, it's okay. But just understanding and just being loving towards your body, and maybe instead of just lashing on to your body and abusing your inner child more, just understanding that and holding that space and being like, okay, we're feeling all that pain we've suffered from, and it's normal that you're rejecting your body. If you went through all of that, you went through, anyone who would have gone through all the trauma you've been through would feel the exact same way you're feeling today, in front of your mirror. So it's okay.
Honestly, Chloe, you're just a big ball of love and light. Just every time I talk to you, I have tears coming up. I just feel like a depth of love I can't even describe. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you.
How can people work with you? Because as I've said many times before, you wouldn't be able to take everyone on, but everyone needs to be in your world. So how can they come into your world?
Well, I'm very active on Instagram. So Chloe Cordero Holistic. If you just need to type Chloe Cordero Holistic, that's really like where you can find me on Google. You have access to my website, so chloecorderoholistic.com. And that's really where you can access me.
And how do you have space for clients, one-to-one clients?
Yeah, so I do have space for one-to-one clients. So you can go on my website. All the information is on there. And you just need to fill like in your application form and, to contact me or send me a message. You can also contact me through Instagram. So, yeah.
Thank you, sister. And what is one last thing you'd like to leave the listeners with today?
Well, that's a good question. Well, just be kind. Yeah. I think what have helped me throughout all my journey was just be compassionate, kind, and loving towards yourself as much as you can. Try to understand where you're coming from. The same way you have the ability, and we all do this very well, understanding others, where they're coming from. What about you understanding where you are coming from and why you are suffering from this or that today, and having more compassion for yourself?
Thank you so much for your wisdom and your time, Chloe. It's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate it.
Oh, it was an amazing pleasure for me. Thank you. And I love being in your energy as well, Victoria. It's so healing as well, because your energy is very healing as well.
Thank you, Chloe.
So thank you.
All right, Queens listening, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.